The War of the Voidborn. The First Breach. Deep in space, listening post Echo 7 floated in the darkness. It was a small station, built to monitor deep space signals, scanning the unknown for any threats. For years, it had detected nothing unusual. But then, one night, it went silent. No distress calls. No warning. Just silence. Earth's Defense Command immediately dispatched a rescue team. The small fleet arrived within hours, their ships moving carefully toward the listening post. As they approached, their lights revealed something strange. The station was intact, but its power was failing. The massive antennas hung lifeless, and its emergency lights flickered weakly. Commander Reynolds, leading the mission, gave the order. Prepare for boarding. Find out what happened. The boarding team suited up and entered the station. The inside was eerily quiet. The halls were dark, except for the dim glow of red emergency lights. Weapons ready, they moved forward, scanning for life signs. But all they found were empty rooms. The crew was gone. The rescue team split up, searching for answers. In the control room, Lieutenant Harris powered up the station's last remaining computer. The screen flickered, and a log appeared. A security recording. Time-stamped just before the station went silent. The team watched in horror. The footage showed the station's crew working normally. Then, suddenly, the lights flickered. The air seemed to ripple. The crew turned, staring at the walls. Shadows moved, inside the walls. Shapes twisted and shifted, spreading like ink in water. Panic erupted. Crew members screamed as the shadows reached for them, pulling them into the walls. Others tried to run, but the darkness swallowed them. Then, the feed cut to static. Silence filled the control room. What was that? Someone whispered. Commander Reynolds didn't answer. He was staring out the window, at deep space. Something was there. A massive structure, pulsing with blue and red energy, floated in the distance. It hadn't been there before. It wasn't a ship. It wasn't an asteroid. It was alive. And then, before their eyes, it absorbed one of the station's moons. The entire moon, millions of tons of rock and metal, collapsed inward, vanishing into the structure. Alarms blared in the rescue ships. Defense Command was calling. Unknown entity detected. It's moving toward Earth. Prepare for war. Humanity was under attack. But this was no ordinary invasion. This was something far worse. The unseen enemy. Earth's Defense Command barely had time to react before the Voidborn struck again. The Titan Defense Station, orbiting Saturn's largest moon, was the first line of defense. It was armed with powerful railguns, missile launchers, and laser turrets, enough firepower to destroy a fleet. But against the Voidborn, these weapons meant nothing. The attack began without warning. A sudden energy spike. A deep vibration through the station's metal halls. Then, they appeared. Shadow-like figures emerged from the walls. They had no solid shape, shifting like liquid smoke. They moved without sound, twisting and stretching. The first victims barely had time to scream. Contact. We have intruders. Security forces opened fire. Bullets and plasma rounds passed through the shadows, hitting nothing. The Voidborn didn't even slow down. Soldiers screamed as the creatures phased through them. For a split second, they froze. Then their bodies collapsed into dust. Panic spread. Defense officers called for reinforcements. Warships fired heavy weapons, but the enemy had no ships. The Voidborn simply drifted through space, slipping through hulls, spreading like a virus. It wasn't a battle. It was a slaughter. A desperate discovery. Inside the Titan station, Dr. Eleanor Vasquez, a military scientist, watched in horror from the command room. Weapons are useless, a lieutenant shouted. Not all weapons, Vasquez whispered. Her eyes locked on the energy readings. The Voidborn weren't just shadows. They were made of unstable energy fields. That meant that they could be disrupted. She grabbed a communicator. All units, switch to ion weapons. Ion bursts, normally used to disable electronics, were quickly charged up. The soldiers fired high-energy ion blasts. And for the first time, the Voidborn reacted. The creatures shuddered as the blasts hit them. Their forms flickered, twisting violently before disintegrating into nothing. It worked. Ion weapons slow them down. Vasquez shouted, "We can fight back." But the victory came too late. The Titan defense station was falling. Half the crew was gone. The command center was collapsing. Vasquez had one chance to get this information back to Earth. She uploaded the data onto a secure pod and launched it into space, just as the station's main reactor exploded. The blast was visible all the way from Mars. A mission of hope. Earth's generals now understood the Voidborn's greatest weakness, high-energy ion weapons. But it wasn't enough. "We don't know what they are, where they come from, or how to stop them completely," General Carter said in a war briefing. One place had answers. Listening post Echo 7. The last place where humans had seen the Voidborn before they attacked. Its computers held data on the first encounter. If there was a way to defeat them, the information was there. A strike team was formed. Elite soldiers, scientists, engineers. They had one mission: go back to Echo 7, recover the data, and survive. The team prepared for departure. The station was a graveyard now, floating in deep space, filled with shadows. And they weren't alone. The Voidborn were waiting. The truth beneath the stars. The strike team arrived in silence. Their dropship hovered over the wreckage of listening post Echo 7. The once active station now drifted in space, cold and lifeless. Flickering red lights lined the hull, and its communications array was frozen in place. No signals, no distress beacons. Inside, it was worse. The corridors were filled with floating debris, broken panels, shattered glass, and something else. Bodies. Men and women in Earth defense uniforms drifted weightlessly, their eyes open but empty. Some had frozen in place, hands still gripping controls. Others had twisted expressions, as if they had seen something impossible before they died. Lieutenant Ross, the team's commander, gritted his teeth. "Stay sharp," he whispered. The whispers in the dark. The deeper they went, the colder it became. Then the whispers started. Faint voices, too quiet to understand, yet too clear to ignore. Private Lee stopped. His face turned pale. "Did you hear that?" Nobody answered. They all heard it. No signals, no heat signatures. The team's engineer, Harper, checked her scanner. Nothing alive. She was wrong. A figure moved in the shadows. Ross aimed his rifle. "Identify yourself." The figure stumbled forward. A man, barely alive. His uniform was torn, his helmet cracked. His breath came in sharp gasps. His eyes were wide with terror. "We dug too deep," he whispered. "We called them here." His fingers clutched a blood-stained data drive. Before anyone could ask more, his body seized up. His mouth opened in a silent scream. Then he was gone. Vanished. Like he had never been there. The forgotten truth. Harper plugged the data drive into her wrist console. The screen flickered. A classified report appeared. Project ECH07. Experiment. Dimensional signal probing. Status. Terminated. Final transmission. They are not coming. They were always here. Ross clenched his jaw. They didn't invade. We woke them up. The Voidborn weren't aliens from another galaxy. They had always been there. Humanity's deep space signals had gone too far, reaching into places never meant to be touched, and something had answered. Something hungry. The voices know their names. The whispers grew louder. Not random anymore. Clear. Personal. They called out names. Their names. Ross turned sharply. He saw his mother. She had died years ago. But there she was, standing in the dark, smiling, reaching out. Harper's hands trembled as she heard her own voice whispering secrets she had never told anyone. Private Lee backed away in fear. "They're inside our heads." Then one of them turned. Sergeant Calloway, the team's best sniper, suddenly raised his weapon against his own squad. His voice was flat, his eyes unfocused. "You don't belong here." He pulled the trigger. The fall of Mars. Mars burned. From the orbiting defense stations, the red planet looked like a wounded giant, its surface torn apart by black void storms. The largest human colony, Olympus Prime, was already lost. Its towering spires, once a symbol of progress, now stood half-destroyed, covered in shifting darkness. The first wave. Colonel Jensen of the Martian Defense Corps stood at the command post, watching the holographic map flicker with red alerts. His forces were barely holding the outer barricades. Thousands of civilians were trapped inside the city, and every escape route had been cut off. "We have to push them back." General Vargas' voice crackled through the comms. "If Olympus Prime falls, the rest of Mars is doomed." Jensen already knew the truth. Mars was already doomed. The Voidborn didn't fight like any enemy before. They didn't send warships. They simply appeared, dark, shifting entities slipping through walls, devouring soldiers from the inside. Bullets were useless. Fire and plasma slowed them down, but only for a few seconds. And now, they were getting stronger. The adapting enemy. A battalion of Earth's best forces had landed near the capital to reinforce the Martian troops. Their first encounter had been a massacre. Lieutenant Ray Carter led a unit of heavily armed troopers, marching through the dust-choked streets. They moved carefully, their ion rifles glowing blue, ready to fire. "Stay close, keep the heat on them," Carter ordered. The shadows moved in. Soldiers fired, releasing bursts of charged energy. The first few enemies screeched, dissolving into black mist. But then, the rest didn't. One Voidborn took a full blast and kept moving. "They're adapting." Harper, the team scientist, yelled over the gunfire. The Voidborn shifted, changed. The soldiers kept firing, but the creatures moved faster, smarter. Some began absorbing energy instead of being destroyed. The weapons that had worked before were no longer enough. Carter and his team fell back, but one by one, they were dragged into the dark. Their screams lasted only seconds before silence returned. The last hope, the Starfire Protocol. Deep beneath the surface, hidden inside an old military bunker, a secret buried for decades waited. A desperate message reached Mars High Command from a classified research facility. "Dr. Evelyn Grant, we have one last option. The Starfire Protocol. It was never completed, but it might be the only way to stop them." Jensen turned to Vargas. "What the hell is the Starfire Protocol?" The general's face was grim. "Something we were never supposed to use. A race against extinction." As Mars' defenses crumbled, a final mission began. A team of elite survivors, including Lieutenant Ross and Harper from the Echo 7 mission, was sent deep into the Martian underground. Their goal: activate the Starfire Protocol. But time was running out. Above them, Olympus Prime collapsed. The Voidborn flooded the city, consuming its last defenders. The surface of Mars turned black with shadows. Inside the bunker, the last survivors of humanity's Martian colony prepared for their final stand. Would the Starfire Protocol be enough? Or was this the end of Mars? And the beginning of the Voidborn's rule? The War of the Voidborn, Part 5. Starfire awakens. The world beneath Mars trembled. Inside an underground military bunker, humanity's last hope stood on a steel platform, surrounded by flickering red lights. The Starfire Protocol. A machine unlike anything ever built. Miles of cables twisted around a reactor pulsing with golden light. Massive conduits fed energy into its core, holding back something ancient, something powerful. Lieutenant Ross wiped sweat from his forehead. "This thing looks like a weapon." Dr. Evelyn Grant, head scientist of the project, shook her head. It's not just a weapon. It's a tear in reality. If we activate it, we don't know what happens next. Ross looked at the countdown timer. 20 minutes. Outside, the Voidborn were coming. A weapon that shouldn't exist. The Starfire Protocol was not designed to kill. It was humanity's attempt to fight back against the unknown, to breach dimensions, to reach beyond what the human mind could understand. But the project was shut down decades ago. Too dangerous, too unpredictable. Now, it was the only chance left. Sergeant Harper checked the power readings. The core is stable, but once we go live, there's no shutting it down. Ross exhaled. Then we make it count. The Voidborn's true plan. Then, something unexpected happened. The Voidborn stopped attacking. The bunker's security monitors showed thousands of them, gathered outside, but they weren't advancing. They weren't trying to kill the humans. They were trying to stop the activation. Ross frowned. Why would they stop? They've been wiping us out for days. Dr. Grant's face turned pale. Because we assumed they were attacking us. She pointed to the energy readings. But they weren't attacking Earth. They were trying to stop us from using Starfire. Ross felt a chill run down his spine. Why? What are they so afraid of? The last mission. With the Voidborn holding back, Command made a decision. They couldn't fire Starfire from inside the bunker. They needed to get it to the heart of the invasion. The massive rift floating above Olympus Prime, where the Voidborn had entered the solar system. A strike team was assembled. A single ship, the Iron Dawn, would carry the device to the rift. Ross and Harper suited up, knowing the truth. This was a one-way trip. Dr. Grant watched them board the ship. If this doesn't work, there's no plan B. Ross gave a small smile. Then we make sure it does. The journey to the rift. The Iron Dawn blasted off, cutting through the blackened sky of Mars. Below them, the planet burned. The Voidborn swarmed, sensing what was coming. They attacked in waves, but something strange happened. They didn't try to kill the crew. They tried to disable the ship. They don't want us dead. Harper yelled over the alarms. They want us to stop. Ross pushed the engines to full power. They were too late. The Iron Dawn dove into the heart of the Voidborn rift. The other side. The ship emerged into a nightmare. A sky of swirling darkness. Planets shattered into dust. Giant creatures drifted through the void, even larger than the Voidborn themselves. Harper checked the readings. What the hell is this place? Dr. Grant's voice came through the radio. The Voidborn weren't attacking us. They were running from something. And then they saw it. Something was waiting beyond the rift. Something far worse than the Voidborn. The final choice. Ross stared at the horror before him. They had spent days fighting to activate the Starfire Protocol, believing it would save humanity. But now, they realized it might be the key to opening something far worse. The timer on the Starfire device ticked down. 1 minute left. Ross turned to Harper. Do we stop it? Harper hesitated, looking at the darkness ahead, then at the creatures behind them. Or do we finish what we started? The countdown reached 10 seconds. The choice had to be made. Would they risk everything, or doom humanity to an even greater nightmare? Starfire awakens. The world beneath Mars trembled. Inside an underground military bunker, humanity's last hope stood on a steel platform surrounded by flickering red lights. The Starfire Protocol. A machine unlike anything ever built. Miles of cables twisted around a reactor pulsing with golden light. Massive conduits fed energy into its core, holding back something ancient, something powerful. Lieutenant Ross wiped sweat from his forehead. This thing looks like a weapon. Dr. Evelyn Grant, head scientist of the project, shook her head. It's not just a weapon. It's a tear in reality. If we activate it, we don't know what happens next. Ross looked at the countdown timer. 20 minutes. Outside, the Voidborn were coming. A weapon that shouldn't exist. The Starfire Protocol was not designed to kill. It was humanity's attempt to fight back against the unknown, to breach dimensions, to reach beyond what the human mind could understand. But the project was shut down decades ago. Too dangerous, too unpredictable. Now, it was the only chance left. Sergeant Harper checked the power readings. The core is stable, but once we go live, there's no shutting it down. Ross exhaled. Then we make it count. The Voidborn's true plan. Then, something unexpected happened. The Voidborn stopped attacking. The bunker's security monitors showed thousands of them, gathered outside, but they weren't advancing. They weren't trying to kill the humans. They were trying to stop the activation. Ross frowned. Why would they stop? They'd been wiping us out for days. Dr. Grant's face turned pale. Because we assumed they were attacking us. She pointed to the energy readings. But they weren't attacking Earth. They were trying to stop us from using Starfire. Ross felt a chill run down his spine. Why? What are they so afraid of? The last mission. With the Voidborn holding back, Command made a decision. They couldn't fire Starfire from inside the bunker. They needed to get it to the heart of the invasion. The massive rift floating above Olympus Prime, where the Voidborn had entered the solar system. A strike team was assembled. A single ship, the Iron Dawn, would carry the device to the rift. Ross and Harper suited up, knowing the truth. This was a one-way trip. Dr. Grant watched them board the ship. If this doesn't work, there's no plan B. Ross gave a small smile. Then we make sure it does. The journey to the rift. The Iron Dawn blasted off, cutting through the blackened sky of Mars. Below them, the planet burned. The Voidborn swarmed, sensing what was coming. They attacked in waves, but something strange happened. They didn't try to kill the crew. They tried to disable the ship. They don't want us dead. Harper yelled over the alarms. They want us to stop. Ross pushed the engines to full power. They were too late. The Iron Dawn dove into the heart of the Voidborn rift. The other side. The ship emerged into a nightmare. A sky of swirling darkness. Planets shattered into dust. Giant creatures drifted through the void, even larger than the Voidborn themselves. Harper checked the readings. What the hell is this place? Dr. Grant's voice came through the radio. The Voidborn weren't attacking us. They were running from something. And then they saw it. Something was waiting beyond the rift. Something far worse than the Voidborn. The final choice. Ross stared at the horror before him. They had spent days fighting to activate the Starfire Protocol, believing it would save humanity. But now they realized it might be the key to opening something far worse. The timer on the Starfire device ticked down. 1 minute left. Ross turned to Harper. Do we stop it? Harper hesitated, looking at the darkness ahead, then at the creatures behind them. Or do we finish what we started? The countdown reached 10 seconds. The choice had to be made. Would they risk everything, or doom humanity to an even greater nightmare? The final gate. The Iron Dawn drifted at the edge of the solar system. Around it, the stars seemed wrong, like something had twisted space itself. The ship's sensors malfunctioned, unable to process what lay ahead. Ross gripped the controls. The crew was silent, staring through the reinforced glass. The Voidborn were waiting. Not attacking. Not swarming. Just watching. And beyond them, something far worse stirred in the abyss. A sky full of monsters. Harper checked the readings. Captain, you need to see this. Ross turned to the monitors. His stomach dropped. Millions of shifting, monstrous forms moved through the void. Some were massive, larger than moons, their bodies pulsating with energy. Others were nothing more than writhing shadows, stretching across the darkness. But they weren't advancing toward Earth. They were converging toward one point in space. The final gate. Ross looked at the Starfire Protocol, humanity's most powerful weapon, sitting in the ship's cargo hold, ready to deploy. If we fire Starfire here, Harper whispered, "We could close the rift for good." Ross nodded. "Then let's." A transmission cut through the static. The message. It wasn't human. The voice came from everywhere and nowhere, echoing through the ship's comms. "Your kind opened the gate. Now you must close it, or all will be lost." The crew froze. Harper stared at the captain. Did the Voidborn just talk to us? The transmission continued, a chorus of voices, like thousands speaking as one. "You see us as monsters. You think we came to destroy. We did not. We are the last defense. We are the gatekeepers. Something has awakened beyond the rift. It is coming, and it will not stop." Ross' hands tightened on the controls. "They aren't the invaders." His voice was barely a whisper. "They're trying to stop something worse, the horror beyond the rift." Dr. Grant's voice crackled through the radio from Earth. "Captain, you need to confirm what you're hearing. Are the Voidborn communicating?" Ross pressed the comm. "They say we made a mistake, that the real enemy is still coming." A heavy silence. Then Grant spoke again. "What do they mean by the gate?" Ross looked ahead, past the Voidborn. There, in the darkness, space itself was breaking apart. Something vast was pushing through, its form impossible to understand. It wasn't one creature, it was many, fused into one, their bodies warping and twisting, as if the laws of reality couldn't contain them. It wasn't alive in any way humans could comprehend. It was something ancient, something that should have stayed buried in the void. And humanity had awakened it, a deadly choice. Ross turned back to the crew. If the Voidborn are telling the truth, then firing Starfire might not just stop them. It might stop that thing. Harper clenched his jaw. Or it could tear open the rift even wider. The transmission came again. "Fire the weapon. Seal the gate, or everything dies." Ross looked at the countdown timer on Starfire. 3 minutes left. The crew had to decide. A last stand. The Iron Dawn's engines roared as it pushed forward, deeper into the chaos. The Voidborn moved with them, forming a living wall between the rift and whatever monstrosity was emerging. A battle erupted. The creatures beyond the rift lashed out, tendrils of darkness grabbing onto the Voidborn, twisting them apart. The Voidborn fought back, their forms flickering, burning against the abomination's assault. But they were losing. Ross locked in the coordinates. "If we do this, there's no going back," Harper said. Ross nodded. "Fire." The gate closes. Starfire activated. A golden light erupted from the ship, spreading through space like wildfire. The rift shuddered. The monstrous thing inside screamed. The Voidborn held the line, sacrificing themselves as the Starfire pulse collapsed the breach. A final desperate howl echoed through the void. Then, in an instant, silence. The rift was gone. The Voidborn were gone. And the sky was empty once more. What remains? The Iron Dawn drifted, its engines dead. Ross looked at the darkened screens, then at Harper. "Are we still alive?" Harper let out a breath. "I think so." A new transmission crackled through the comms. Dr. Grant's voice, shaky with disbelief. "The readings are clear. The rift is closed." Earth was safe. Ross looked back at where the Voidborn had fought. The creatures humanity once feared, the ones they had battled, had never been the enemy. They were protectors. And now, they were gone. The war that never was. Back on Earth, governments scrambled to rewrite history. The war would be remembered as a victory against an unknown alien threat. The truth. The real war had been fought in the shadows, and humanity had barely survived. But Ross knew one thing for certain. If the Voidborn had been the last defense against what lay beyond, then one day something else might come through. And next time, there might be no one left to stop it. The war beyond reality. The Iron Dawn drifted in the silence of space. Everything had led to this moment. The war, the battles, the desperate struggle to survive. But now, humanity faced an impossible choice. Before them, the final gate trembled, its edges cracking apart as something massive pushed through. Behind them, the Voidborn hovered in eerie silence. They had fought against these shadowy beings, believing them to be the enemy. But now, humanity wasn't so sure. The choice. A transmission crackled through the ship's comms. Shut down Starfire. It was the Voidborn. If you fire, you will destroy us all. Harper turned from the control panel, his voice shaking. Captain, they're asking us to stop. They're saying. I heard them, Ross muttered. His eyes were fixed on the rift. Something was coming. Something even the Voidborn feared. The black abyss twisted as something ancient and hungry began to emerge. Massive limbs, shifting and unnatural, pushed against reality itself. The space around the breach bent and distorted, unable to contain the monstrosity trying to break through. Ross felt a deep primal terror crawl through his mind. This was no simple enemy. This was something beyond understanding, beyond existence, beyond reality itself. The enemy beyond. The Voidborn moved suddenly, their vast forms shifting, swirling, and then they fled. They didn't fight. They didn't stay. They ran. Harper's face was pale. If the Voidborn are leaving, that means they think we're doomed. Ross clenched his jaw. Not yet. He turned to the Starfire controls. The weapon was primed, ready to fire. One shot would seal the breach. But the blast would consume everything nearby. Their fleet, the Voidborn, themselves. Was this the right choice? He looked at his crew. They trusted him. They were ready to die to stop what was coming. But was it enough? The last stand. The final gate cracked open. For the first time, they saw the true horror beyond. A being of shifting energy and shattered time. Its existence a contradiction. Every law of the universe bent around it, twisted, broken. Ross felt his mind splitting, his thoughts unraveling just by looking at it. The ship's sensors screamed, trying to process what should not be. Then, a voice. Not from the Voidborn, not from his crew, but from the thing inside the gate. You are insects. You are nothing. This reality belongs to us. The Voidborn had never been the true enemy. This was. Fire the weapon. Ross slammed his hand onto the control panel. Fire Starfire. The solar system shook. A golden shockwave exploded from the weapon, racing across space, slamming into the rift. The entity screamed. Reality ripped apart as the Starfire pulse collapsed the gate. The Voidborn, caught in the blast, vanished in a final flickering moment. The creature beyond reality twisted, shrieking as the collapsing gate tore it apart. Then, nothing. Aftermath. The Iron Dawn drifted, its systems barely functioning. The fleet was gone. Only a handful of ships remained, damaged and silent. Harper let out a shaky breath. Did we do it? Ross stared at the dark space where the rift had been. The war was over. The Voidborn were gone. The gate was sealed. The enemy beyond had been stopped. But then, the final transmission. A voice. You delayed the end. But it still comes. Ross felt his heart stop. The crew stared in horror. The war wasn't over. It had only just begun.